as Nelson said, a peaceful, stress-free life, right? But you got to get to that point. That takes time. You've got to love yourself enough to invest in yourself. And that's what I tell people a lot is this isn't an investment, but you are going to invest in yourself if you do this. And if you'll invest in yourself through the power of participating dividend-paying life insurance, that it will pay off for you and your family or your heirs in the future. So,
Larry, thank you for joining us today. We want to start off with just you telling us about your history with Nelson Nash. When did you first meet Nelson? And did you meet him first or did you read the book first? What was that order?
I actually read a PDF first. I met Nelson in 2007, and I have the book here that he signed, 1507. So the first part of 2007. But I had learned about becoming your own banker, and just kind of, put it out there. At the time, I was using some other financial software. I was pretty new in the business. I got in the business in 2004, but I was already a big advocate of life insurance. Way prior to that, I had just learned about it through some other reading. And anyway, I had a client, one of my best clients, still one of my best clients to this day, who saw Nelson live a few times at our seminars. But anyway, he goes, "Hey, read this." And he sends me this PDF. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'd seen that. I didn't really pay much attention to it." But he sends me a PDF. And I told him, I was like, "Well, you got to be careful about that stuff. There's a lot of people out there, this and that." And so, needless to say, I met Nelson at a Cal College, and Nelson and Mary both. And I knew right away that, I was just attracted to him. We had lunch together, and he told me about his son, Barry, of course. And, it was, he was a walking, I say, a walking, talking encyclopedia of history and the Bible. I thought he was, after that continued on. And the more I got to know him as a Christian, I was like, he's the wisest man I've ever met, and so, I was just immediately attracted to him. And, from then on, I attended seminars and invited him, and we did seminars together. And so it was awesome.
So do you have any memorable moments with him? I feel like everyone has kind of their Nelson stories. Do you have anything like that stands out to you?
I have a lot. The first seminar that he did for me was definitely enlightening and fun, a little scary. Didn't know if anyone would show up. I think I recently watched an older video with him that he's talking about, people not showing up and how his initial clients, when he introduced them to this, asked him, "Well, who else is doing this?" And he said, "Well, if you're the only one, that's probably a good thing." And so there weren't many people there. There was probably 6 or 7. And, I had done some marketing. I had read, somebody had just published a little PDF that was, I'm drawing a blank, of course. But the little black and yellow books that came out that said dummies for something. And it was a dummy.
Seminars for Dummies.
Yeah, webinars for dummies. Yeah. And I got that. So I started doing some of the things that it recommended in there. But the people that came to that seminar, probably out of the 6 or 7, 3 or 4 became clients, and they're still clients to this day, have multiple IBC policies and practice this, and they're my favorite people. and I too, I believe to them, they're really grateful for, introducing them to Nelson and, learning this concept.
What you meant to say was multiple participating whole life insurance policies used for the IVC, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. But yeah, the reason I mentioned that is just that, the Nelson Nash Institute, as we mature and evolve and see more things happen in the marketplace that are confusing, okay, that are adding to the problem and confusing the general public. So one of the initiatives that we're taking is to really focus on language and with the public and also with practitioners and insurance agents also, because IBC is a concept, we all know that, and it's a financial philosophy, it's a lifestyle philosophy, and the best platform to exercise and launch this concept from is the participating whole life insurance policy from a mutual company or mutual holding company. And so, that clarification, I always say that all the time now. And the reason I do that is because my council board, the guys and gals that are voluntarily help me work through the insurance landscape and the marketing pitfalls out there. That's the common theme they keep hitting me with. I'm saying, you're right. I need to clean my language up. Infinite banking is definitely caught on now and is taking off. And it seems like the word infinite banking is being used for a lot of different things. Okay. So you're down in Ocean Springs, Mississippi?
I'm in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, about 4.5 hours from y'all. And, Nelson always drove when he came here, and he brought Mary sometimes. And, we did many seminars, and, I just enjoyed every one. I was looking back at some older pictures today, this morning, and, I'll be glad to share some of those. I'm sure you've seen some of those, but I also have, all of my I won't say all of them because I counted them and I've been to more than that, but I have all of my think tank badges, still, Lee, that, you handed out. So, let me show, I keep them, some of them are handwritten, you might recognize some of these older ones, but, there's at least 15 and there's more. But yeah, I've been to quite a few of those and saw Nelson at most of them. And, I just appreciate Nelson, for introducing me to this and, to other people within the Austrian, community. But, whenever I would thank Nelson, he would always say, just carrying out orders, and so I always love that and appreciate that, about him.
No, he was a genuine individual. Okay, he didn't have any ulterior motives when he talked to people. He just truly loved people and he wanted to develop relationships with them. That was his main goal. And the Nelson Nash Institute is supposed to be his persona carried on. So we're trying to do the same thing. Stay in touch with everybody who's part of the organization and provide them whatever support they need. Really, we can't replicate his intellect because, like you said, he was a walking encyclopedia, and he didn't have notes for anything. I mean, he's the only guy I know could stand there and talk for 10 hours in a seminar and not ever refer to anything. Just it was all coming out of his head.
Yeah, it reminds me as you're saying that, scripture I read this morning, John 13, was speaking of love and authentic love. And that's what I always got from Nelson. I've been a part of just about every, financial club out there over the years. And, the one thing that I always appreciated, got from Nelson was just that love, that true love. And he would say that he would call you love, you need to go back and read this, or why don't you do that? And, So that's the way he liked to share things. And it was, you could feel it for sure. I always felt that every time I went to a think tank, David and Lee, from all of you, you just feel the love, it's amazing. It really is amazing. And from that perspective, it's hard to see how people can't see it, but hey, we're all blinded, right? It's we all have blind spots, and that's but yeah, that's what I really appreciated about Nelson, was the love.
So you've talked a little bit about the think tank, and which is our annual event, our annual conference, and it's definitely grown in size over the years, and we're really excited about seeing the participation and where it is going. What is your favorite part of the Nelson Nash Institute community, and especially those annual think tanks?
Well, you're right. It has changed a lot, over the years. My first one, which was probably, I'm just guessing 2008-ish, was mind blowing. I was just, it was like a waterfall, right? And I just couldn't believe, the things people were doing with this. And so it caused me to maybe look at it with a little filter of caution, because there was a lot of, crazy things back then going on, things people were doing. So, there's a few people, you're all aware of that, are still around, that are still healthy participants, but we cycled through some people, and I mean, I guess I just love hearing people share their story about how IBC has affected them, and the things that they're doing. I just love to hear new ways and all the ways that it's impacted lives, families and businesses all over. But I most appreciate just, again, hearing Nelson. You can hear him. I've read the book and listened to the audio, dozens of times. And I hear something new every time. I learn something new just in the book. I keep the book on my desk, and anytime I'm talking to a client or somebody new, I'll just say, well, look, on this page or that page, and reread that, just like Nelson used to say, because it's just a good, he called it noise. And I listened to that. That is my one regret, is that was the one I missed. Two think tanks, and one was the one on the noise, and the one was just this past year. I'm not a big flyer, and didn't want to go to
come on,
Nevada.
You could ride your bike out there, man.
I've got to drive to Orlando too. So, it's, yeah. So I love the think tanks. I love just getting around people that love this message and want to share it with others.
Well, going back to the IBC community, the practitioner community, it's changed dramatically since our first think tank in 2005 till the last one we did in the Vegas area back in last February. We're getting more and more individuals who are new to the industry, the insurance industry. And most of them have been clients of people like Barry Page, and they've done it in their own life, and they love it, and they see the freedom it gives them, and they want to share that with other individuals. So they get licensed and they want to become insurance agents and do this. But what they don't see is that they're starting a business, and they need to be very deliberate in how they do it and have a plan. So we're kind of adding more content to help them be successful as new insurance agents / practitioners. That's kind of one of the places we're going to. And if you go back to like you said, 2008 think tank, I refer to those days as the Wild West. Okay. Because there was nothing out there except for Nelson doing it. Okay. And so we looked, and people would support us, and we had these agents that would love it. And what Nelson says in the book, what's the most important thing? Imagination. right? It's not intellect. It's not education. It's imagination. So those days are all about imagination, man, on how, some of the case studies we did is like, whoa, let's dial that back now because that's going to get somebody in trouble. So, I mean, that's kind of the change that I see that I'm going through,
Well, then the reason and logic hits you like a 2x4 across the head, right? And then, I mean, I've had literally people after they read this book saying, man, this guy was a prophet. This is, they told me that, and I didn't bring it up, right? So, yeah, that's amazing. But it's funny that quote what you just said about a business, because I happen to have some notes that I always took copious notes whenever Nelson would speak. And me being a business owner, I've really never had a job, 40 years, self-employed. But here's what he said. When you buy a life insurance policy, you're starting a business. Yeah. So I tell that to all of my business owners, whenever I'm speaking to them, because it truly is, and you run it like a business, it'll perform like a business. If you don't run it like a business, it's not going to perform very well. Right. But that's a hard lesson I had to learn too. Being in business, entrepreneurs are known for, not being the best record keepers, or, they are focusing on that imagination until reason hits them,
Well, just to make a comment about, when you start up a policy, you're starting up a business, and Nelson tells you how to do it correctly. Okay. He tells you to capitalize. He tells you not to steal the peas. And he tells you to think long range. If you follow those 3 rules, wouldn't you be more successful in your business endeavors?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The think long term is, and that I use that almost every day, because most businesses are thinking how far into the future, next payroll, right? Next quarter, even the big announcements that come on the financial news, channels, or just talking about the next quarter, maybe next year. Whereas the life insurance companies and people that are practicing IBC, we're thinking 100 years down the road. And so that is very important to think that. And the capitalization, don't be afraid to capitalize. I think the fact that those rules maybe say don't in front of them, I learned, in my positive thinking reading that you shouldn't start with don't, but those are the things that people do, they have mental blocks against, they want to do the minimum, right? What is the minimum I can do? Because that's the way we've been trained. So it is the rethink your thinking that came later that we have to help them with, So yeah, I love the rules. And like you said, he explained it all for us. We just have to listen. And people that are hard-headed like me have to listen over and over again.
I mean, you're not the Lone Ranger, okay? That's why Nelson was so consistent with his message, because people need to hear it over and over and over again. Reinforce. One of his one-liners was, keeping your clients between the ditches. Okay, that was so important. But you're kind of right about the don'ts. It's kind of a negative connotation, right? Don't be afraid to capitalize. That's why I guess I
don't steal the peas. Yeah, don't do business with banks.
Capitalize.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to capitalize. Yeah.
Well, in life insurance terms, okay, thinking about a whole life policy, what's the definition of capitalize? What does that mean for a policy?
You got to get money in there, right? Just like with a business, people, I often ask, business owners, why do businesses fail? And they don't use the word capital a lot of times, but they'll say money, right? They, didn't have enough money. And,
well, capital is not the same as money, right? Yeah.
Right. I'm just kind of relating my
they don't get it. They don't get it. Okay, go ahead.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, we have to, get started and understand that the more we have, the more we'll have. Right. So, you gotta And just like a business, they usually understand that, businesses take a few years to earn a profit. And so I always try to kind of relate it back to business. And I always ask them, if they're not a business owner, maybe they just got a regular job. Has anybody in your family ever owned a business? Because you're going to have to start thinking, like a business if you want to do this. So yeah, the capitalization is key. We have to get the capital. We have to make the effort to do this if we want to do it, whether it be our time, our money, our commitment. Our human capital is what I often relate to whenever I'm making that comparison. I'll ask people, what's your human capital worth, right? What did, the economic value, the human life value, which I know Nelson didn't really like to go down that road, but, again, that's why I use human capital is important, and people, they, especially real estate people, they don't quite understand. And I've been a real estate investor for many years, probably 30 years we started ago. But people don't always quite quantify their efforts into, buying real estate. They, unlike Nelson that bought property, they bought houses. And so if those properties, they don't count the time that they had to paint the house. They had to go through the closing. They had to, hire the lawyers to set up the LLCs. They don't count any of that stuff, right? And so that's really, a major difference, with this type of business, in comparison to the others. But it's a good place for anyone to start, and just realizing that, hey, whether or not you're a business owner now or a employee, maybe later in the future, you'll want to own a business, and maybe that'll be your retirement. I was just speaking to somebody yesterday about, their transition from a working 9-to-5 job to retirement. And, many people say, oh, I'll never stop working. I'll probably do something else or whatever. Well, I encourage them to, start a business. And how are you going to start a business? Where you're going to need capital, right? You're going to have to put time, effort, and commitment into that business, and you will need the capital.
Well, yeah, just to add something to that too, if you're thinking about, when you buy a policy and you're setting the policy up and you're capitalizing the policy and and you're gonna, you can use it for anything you want to use it for. You can use it for investments. You can use it for,
College, whatever.
College funding. You can use it for buying other assets. You can use it for generational wealth transfer. What do you want to use it for? But if you think of it as a business, and then you talked about, lawyers, accountants, all these other people that you have to pay for a tip for a normal business. Well, Nelson would contrast that with buying these whole life insurance policies. Is you've already got your staff already hired. It's called your insurance agent and the home office staff. And they're in place. And as a policy owner, you're the business owner, so you call the shots. And yeah, you're paying premiums, which is good. That's your capital base. But you don't have to expend any additional funding, to move that business and grow
The
it.
hired help is already there, right?
They're already there.
Part of
already there. Yeah.
Part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so anyway, it's just he just thought differently than other people. He was, he thought, he thought different. I thought differently than he did. We'd sit here in my office, 5 days a week. And typically we had an argument about something because he was coming at it from one angle and I was hearing something else. And we'd kind of like butt heads and we'd have to talk through it and figure out what he was talking about and how I understood it. And so, a lot of people thought he was crazy, especially in the early years. But hey, he was an avid reader. I'm talking about avid reader. I'm talking about he did buy our books. Like if you go to the Nelson Nash Institute website, we have one of the resources is recommended reading. And those aren't just books out there that we arbitrarily threw on there. Those are books that Nelson read. And after he went through them, he said, okay, I want this on the list. And it's either a history lesson, economic lesson, or self-improvement, one of those categories. And so we throw it on there. And there was just as many books that are not on there that he read. He said, no, I don't want these. I'm not going to put this one on there. So anyway, So it's just, and I don't know if anybody's noticed or not, but since Nelson passed in 2019, we haven't added any books to that list. Okay.
So, Barry, you mentioned earlier talking about the think tank. One of your favorite parts of that was hearing, stories from other agents who are using the infinite banking concepts with their clients and how it has impacted their clients' lives. Do you have any stories like that you could share, that you have seen infinite banking concepts working in your clients' lives and how it's changed them, and maybe even generationally?
Quite a few. I don't know if I have any that have. I mean, I know personally. My policies have saved me from bankruptcy. Right? I went through divorce. I went through hurricanes. So, if I would not have saved money in my policy, I would have been bankrupt a long time ago. And in business, I've needed them over and over and over. But as far as my clients, there have been quite a few, but a couple come to mind because they've paid for their children's college, they've built pools so their kids could stay there at home and friends could come over, right? And they financed that through their IBC policies, right? And they never would have thought about that. But on the flip side of that, I've got clients that have never taken a loan, even though I've encouraged them to. I've got a client that has well over $1 million in cash back and has never taken a loan because he doesn't want to pay interest, right? So he just pays cash, and he's got plenty of cash, right? But the flip side of that story is his wife died a few years ago, and they had 4 kids. So just the pure life insurance was a huge benefit, which he would have never bought, as a matter of fact. I talked to this guy for about 5 years before he became a client, right? And he started out with some term policies, and then he saw Nelson, and he ended up doing this, but he, I still don't think he gets it, because he, the noise, let's just call it. But he has felt the benefits because, again, of the death benefit, just the pure simplicity. And, I remember Dwayne Burnell telling the story of his brother at a think tank many years ago. And, that story brought tears to my eyes. And it's the same in this case, right? Because had he not listened to Nelson and at least been on that path of the IBC, then he would have never placed the life insurance in the first place, right? So, and it's a different way of teaching. I mean, I was just listening the last couple of days of Nelson in a video talking about the very thing he talks about in the first chapter of the book. Our need for finance is much greater than our need, for the death benefit. But the death benefit definitely has its place, right? And but the financing is not going to go away. We're spending more money than ever, and that's always what I relate to people. Will I'm talking to somebody right now that's just learning about this, and they're not a client, but he is a business owner, and I just ask him, how much money are you going to spend in your business this year? And I say, well, how much have you spent up until this point, and how much you think you'll spend going forward? And, you could just see the wheels starting to turn in his mind as I was talking to him about this thing. And I said, so all that money is going to pass through someone's bank, right? Whose bank do you want it to pass through first, right? So, it's there's been a lot of stories, and but those are the main ones. Is just both sides of the spectrum. For using it from little things to big things, and then the future benefit, which
No, I mean I'm with you 100% on that. Nelson does say that financing things that outweighs your death benefit, but he doesn't say discount the death benefit, because that's critically important. It really is. And like like I remember that conversation, that presentation that Dwayne did for us. It was very, very, very emotional. And now you've done a couple of presentations at the think tank also, and you get very emotional too when you talk about that, and it's very evident. And I think it really shows how genuine we're trying to make this. It's not about, people say, oh no, you're just trying to sell life insurance. No, it's just about a life insurance sales thing. No, it's not. You're generally emotional about your calling in life, right? And in your relationships with your clients. And it's about helping people. I really think it is. And when I talk to practitioners, I say, okay, now how many agents, or I'm sorry, how many clients can you service as an individual agent that are IBC type clients? I mean, there's a limit to your time and availability, right?
Yes. Yes.
So,
absolutely. And I grapple with that because we feel like you always got to have new business when you're in business, right? Regardless of the business. But I keep saying my best clients. When I say best clients, it's not just because they've done a lot of business with me. It's because they truly appreciate what we're discussing right here, right? They feel that same, love and passion for what they're doing and how they're helping their family. And, you can feel good about yourself knowing that you're doing the right thing. It's a noble thing that we do individually and then as agents. But you're right. There's only so much you can do. And especially, in your presentation you gave a few years back, David, where you had the PowerPoint and you listed, I mean, that's a lot of work to keep up with all of those policies, right? And but again, I was just hearing Nelson again in another video. He's talking about we overcomplicate things. It's really just a matter of doing it, but we want to get in the weeds, right? We always are new people hearing about this, and you're exactly right. They think it's about selling life insurance, but it's not. Once people recognize that, it truly becomes something that they believe in and know they can depend upon.
Yeah, no, I get you. And you're talking about my spreadsheet that I have with a listing of the policies that my wife and I own. You just remind me that I have a couple of policy premiums due. Shucks, I got to pay those nasty premiums.
Hey, but guess what? What happens as soon as you pay the premium? You get the dividend, right? And the policy just grows that much more. So
it gets bigger. Yeah, it gets bigger because you got that uninterrupted compounding on the base, and then you have additional money put in there in the form of premium, and then it could be a paid up additions rider premium. It could then you have your dividend buying additional pay up insurance, which helps a lot. I love that. But yeah, you talk about your client who's not being an honest banker because he's not using his policies, as banking, and he can save so much money, even though he's paying interest to the insurance company on policy loan servicing. But you need to pay it there. You're gonna pay it somewhere else, and if you do it right, then you can recapture a lot of that cash flow. So whatever. Anyway, I always encourage Lee to use her policies to put her dog in doggy daycare.
My dog's here too, Lee, but she's back there in her own room. She comes to work with me every day, but she's not barking now because she's inside. But she goes outside, and then the neighbor's dog gets her riled up. So I understand.
No, I got one here behind me. You've probably seen him all the time, but for some reason he's acting good today. Yesterday he was not so good. I was on somebody else's podcast yesterday and he was like going crazy. He was like, oh my gosh, this isn't good. But hey, listen, we're making it real, man. This is not a stage production. This is a real conversation.
Exactly.
So there we are.
Speaking of that, I got to have you on mine too sometime. So we'll set that up.
So you've been an authorized IBC practitioner for many years now, And what advice would you give to someone who is just starting their journey as an authorized IBC practitioner?
As a practitioner agent, or maybe as a person just practicing IBC?
Well, let's talk about both. What would you for an agent and then somebody who is starting their IBC journey as a client?
Well, I always tell them, first of all, make sure you're working with somebody that's, if you want to learn this, you need to learn it from somebody that's practicing it, right? The whole word practitioner, right? So somebody that's utilizing it. But yeah, just understand it takes time, it takes commitment, but the rewards are more than worth the effort. And you need to read the book, as Nelson said, at least once a year, because you're going to get distracted by the noise. You're going to watch the news. You're going to hear somebody telling you about the latest, greatest, best thing out there. And so just stick to the course, read the book, reread the book, make notes in the book, and then ask questions to whoever you're working with, about, what you're learning or what, concerns you may have. And, stick to the course, because I've really never met anyone, you hear sometimes these people have bad stories, but I think we get thrown into the same lump of things. And that's why, Nelson made the point of putting it in his first book and putting it in his second book, that these UL, IUL, VUL policies are not the same. They're not created equal. And anybody that's ever had a true participating whole life policy, more than 3 years, I've never heard anybody have any bad stories about them. The only bad stories you hear are from the UL or the final expense that they think is whole life, these policies, and they're not. Because I've had literally clients that have gotten divorced like in the second year of the policy. And of course, they both refused to pay premiums after that, right? And the policies just kept going. No matter what, the policies they stayed in force, right? So it's hard to mess it up. I heard somebody say that at a think tank one time. It's hard to mess this up, and so if you do mess it up, just go back and read the book, it's not that bad. As far as a new agent, like we've discussed, these things have changed over the years. The practitioner program, I'll be honest, I was not a big fan when you first came out with it, because, I met Bob Murphy at the first think tank that he came to. And, I remember talking to him about life insurance. He was not that knowledgeable about it. Now, of course, he tore it all apart and met with all the home offices and all of that stuff. But the fact that this guy was going to teach me about this didn't really set with me very well. And I think with a lot of other, practitioners, agents, people that didn't become practitioners maybe at the time. And, but I finally gave in just a couple months after that. I was just like, well, I'm going to do this. And now that I've done it, and now that the world has changed and IUL has become prevalent, I really understand why Nelson started the program, right? But just advice for the practitioner agent is, stick to the program. I can't, David, I've contacted you many times about the agents that contact me. It's not as prevalent as it used to be, but I would literally get, once a week, an agent contact me, and many times they would not be completely truthful up front and tell me they were an agent. People always want to take it and twist it. And honestly, I tried to do the same thing over the years, but I've always come back out of all of those things that I mentioned I've been through. I've always come back to the IVC. And why? Because it is the truth, and it is the love of the people that truly learn this and then become passionate about it because they've done it. They practiced, right? And that's why I say you have to work with a practitioner because they've done it, right? And it's not just pie in the sky. It's something that works. And I will say something that did take me off track. And I got this from Nelson because probably the first or second seminar that Nelson did for me, I had asked him, I have a background in marketing. And so I had asked him, well, how do we market this stuff? How do we tell people about this stuff? And of course, practitioners at the think tank, I can remember, one in particular would say, you need to just get a bunch of these books and go out and sell these books. And that hit ground for me because I tell people, you might have heard me say it in my think tank talk that, I tell people I sell books. And David, I've sold a lot of books over the years, right? But I sold books door to door. That's what taught me about life insurance many years ago. Not these books, other books, but I have sold these books door to door with business owners. And, but anyway, back in the beginning, whenever I was asking Nelson about that, he referred me to a lady, Pamela Yellen, Bank on Yourself. And that was a new book out. And, but I didn't realize why he was telling me about her, but he said, hey, do what she's doing. And I actually joined up with her program. But then I just realized it was just a copycat of this. And she was a marketer, right? Because I saw that her book, was actually published and co-authored by a marketing guy that I followed, Dan Kennedy, and learned about marketing from. So anyway, but that took me down the road of chasing some rabbits, let's just say. But being a marketer, myself and understanding that I learned two things. And I think I said this, Nelson would say, whatever business you're in, you need to be in your business and you need to be in the banking business. Well, that marketer that I followed, that I met long time before Nelson, Dan Kennedy, said, whatever business you're in, you need to be in that business and you need to be in the marketing business, right? So, I've tried to follow those two rules. And so, of course, I own a few businesses geared towards marketing and geared towards this. Some lessons that I've learned, and most of them all go back to Nelson. Somebody learned it from him or, when referring to infinite banking anyway.
Well, my wrap-up question that I ask everyone, Barry,
Yes,
is what does infinite banking concept mean to you?
it means, as Nelson said, a peaceful, stress-free life, right? But you got to get to that point. And that takes time, right? So what it really means to me is what we've talked about. It's love. You've got to have a love for your family, or, your cause. And, through that, you've got to love yourself. You've got to love yourself enough to invest in yourself. And that's what I tell people a lot is this isn't an investment, but you are going to invest in yourself if you do this. And if you'll invest in yourself through the power of participating dividend paying life insurance, that it will pay off for you and your family or your heirs in the future. So it means everything, really. My business exists today because of it. I've tried it from all angles, and this is what I've stuck with and what I believe in. And 20 years later, I'm still doing it and practicing it. And that's what it means. It means love. It means being around people like you, y'all, you guys, and being a part of something that I know is helping people and helping families. And so that's really, what makes me sleep comfortably at night. I've got other worries, as we all do, but I don't have to worry about, these policies that I took out years ago. Like you said, David, when you get a premium notice, I don't worry about paying that because I can feel good about it. I know that money will be there for me or my family in the future, versus some other bill, a credit card bill or a bank statement that I get. So, yeah. And yeah, when you look at your bills and when you look at, what Nelson so wisely pointed out to us, I've studied those numbers every which way but loose, but there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Your money goes to your living expenses, it goes to your taxes, and it goes to the interest that you will either pay through your system or somebody else's, right? And so, yeah, those numbers ring true. And it again, I'm a slow learner. It took me a while to get it. So advice there too. Don't get discouraged in a year or two. Just stay to the course and, practice what you're trying to teach others. And, Nelson would always say it's better caught than taught, right? And so the more you try to teach them, it seems like the bigger the wall gets. So just kind of sprinkle on them, let's just say. And flood them like we tend to do as agents, right? We tend to want to give them it all right then and there. And you can't do it. They have to learn on their own. And so, yeah, that would be it. Learn on your own and learn over time.
Thank you, Barry, for spending time with us. We really appreciate all that you had to share, especially your stories about Nelson. It's nice to hear from those who spent time with him and learned firsthand from him. And we just appreciate all of your work.
Well, thank you, Lee and David, for all that you do, because I know you keep this together. And so we appreciate you. I know each of you coming from different backgrounds and whatnot. And of course, Lee, you've been a part ever since, because David drug you in there. But thank you for all your work. When I look back at those old think tank badges and these right here, I know who put all of this stuff together, right? I mean, I know the work that goes into that, right? All of these books. And so this was one I created one time. Yeah, and I learned that from y'all. And I do greatly appreciate you for all that you've done individually and together.